on YouTube, I've been saying the same thing for the past, what, like 6, 7 years, I guess. Well, not 7 years, but probably about 6 years. I've been saying the same thing, and one of my core messages on the channel, I mean, my number one message on the channel has always been, you know, the mentality. I mean, you got to get your mind in the right place. If your mind ain't in the right place, you're not going anywhere. But I certainly have encouraged men to go out there and start online businesses, right? And I've also given guys that recommendation to sorry, don't know if you can hear that or not. Just muted it as well by accident, but yeah. So I've given guys that recommendation to basically go to Asia, Southeast Asia, or you don't even have to go to Southeast Asia, but it's mainly about like going somewhere where you get more bang for your buck, essentially. I mean, in the States, you can go to different parts of the States, like Arkansas, right? Arkansas. Boogie did it. I mean, Arkansas is the cheapest state in America. And that's the only reason why Boogie's still alive, believe it or not. If Boogie was outside of Arkansas, if he was in an expensive state, I think he's from Virginia originally. I'm not sure how much it costs out there, but if Boogie didn't move to Arkansas, almost certainly he would be dead. He wouldn't have been able to afford his whatchamacallit, his health care, man. Boogie was flat broke at one point, but luckily he was able to, the documentary was able to give him some attention, and then Keemstar with the Lol Cow Live, which I don't watch, I have no interest in it, but that contract is probably keeping his head above water, you know. But that's the thing, moving to a place where you get more bang for your buck. Now, when it comes to like starting an online business, I tell people to do that because I think it's more reliable. I think it's safe for the most part if you do it in the right way, and I think that obviously you get more location freedom, you get more freedom by having an online business. It's, you know, people have come to my channel in the past and asked me about blue collar work, for example, and I've never been a fan of blue collar work. And I can tell you from my own experience, had I gone into blue collar, which was never, you know, blue collar was never a consideration for me. It was always going to be either tech, you know. When initially it was tech, but I couldn't make my way in the tech world. But initially it was tech, and later on I decided to become go into entrepreneurship. But when it comes to blue collar, I feel like it's high risk and low reward, because you're not going to get rich off of blue collar typically. I can't say that there's no chance to get rich. I'm not that knowledgeable in the blue collar fields, but typically you're not going to get rich doing blue collar. And you know, that's fine. I mean, that's pretty much fine that you're not going to get rich doing blue collar. But my thing with the blue collar work, really, when it comes down to it, is I've seen like so many guys that have basically ended up in dire straits because they got injured or they lost their health, and they ended up in a state where blue collar is all they know. That's their only skill set, and they couldn't work it, right? They could no longer work blue collar, and that's all they have. That's all they have. That's all they know. I mean, look at that one guy did that video on. He's living on what, £30 a week, something like that. He was a blue collar type dude. You know, he was a blue collar type dude, and look at his situation though. And that's the thing, look at his situation. Because he didn't have any other skills. When I got sick, right, I was still able to work around my illness, right? and I work less now than I did because I got, you know, I'm tired and I'm just not up to it a lot of the time. But I'm making more money than ever, right? I'm not saying that I'm rich, but I'm making more money than I've ever made despite being sick. There's no way you can do that in blue collar work. And if you're working a traditional 9 to 5, you can get fired. So online business is actually lower risk than a lot of people might think. It's very low risk. If you do it, if you don't try to grow too quickly, if you don't over leverage yourself, you know, it's fine, man. It's pretty fine to be an online business and do it, man. You know, and obviously you can use the fact that you're working remotely to move anywhere around the planet. So that gives you more option, more freedom, more bang for your buck. It's a win-win situation, right? A lot of these hustle channels, they promote, you know, just working anywhere, doing any job, doing the tradesman, and you know, I'm against that, bro. Like, I'm against that. Why take more risk? Why make things harder than they need to be? You know, it's like you got these people, they live in London, right? With the housing market, they got the housing crisis in London, and they say, oh, I can't afford to buy a home. You know, these socialists. We're gonna talk a lot about socialists today, right? You know, these socialists, oh, I can't afford to buy a home. It's too hard to buy a home. But yet, that's only in London, though. The homes outside of London are piss cheap. You know, not everywhere, but in many places, right? They're cheap. They're cheap as chips, but people don't want to go there. So really what they're saying is not true. It's a lie. When they say, I can't afford to buy a house, well, you can. You just can't afford to buy a house in London, right? London is a highly competitive city. It's an international city. It's one of the most competitive cities on the planet. And you're not capable. You know, you might, you know, and that's the thing. You might want to buy a home in London. There's nothing wrong with wanting to buy a home in London. The problem is, if I was to tell you, okay, quit your job, start an online business, live cheap in Cambodia, right? Live cheap in Cambodia for 5 years, save up your money, come back and buy the home. They're going to say, I don't want to do that. I know that's what they're going to say. Because they want to buy the home, but they only want to buy the home on their terms. So they don't really want it that bad. They don't want it that bad. It's only on their terms. These guys think that they can call the shots like they're some big daddy, you know, or a big boss man. And they're not. You can't call the shots. You're a nobody. You have to play the game. You have to do what works. Everybody wants to try and cheat the system, but no, you can't do that. It's not about doing what you want. It's about doing what works at the end of the day. And what works is, if you want a home in London, you're going to have to generate, you know, I don't know, 50, 100, I think about 80,000, you know, in cash to pay, to put a down payment. I don't know how much it is, but, you know, they ain't got that. And they ain't going to save it on the pittance that they're making. So that's why they say, oh, I've got no chance, I've got no chance. But you can buy a home cheap in another part of the country. And if you want the London property so bad, you're going to have to make changes. But they don't want to do it. They don't want to make any sacrifices. Most people don't want to make any sacrifices. Right? And you look at a lot of people, like, they're working in these jobs. Right? They're working in these jobs and they're actually getting poorer working these jobs because the pay is not really improving over time. Right? The pay is basically stagnant. I mean, the real wages are getting lower if you adjust for inflation. Okay, and this is the reality of the situation, that guys are not in careers. A lot of guys aren't in careers that are, you're not actually doing anything. This idea that, especially amongst the working class, that I'm working a job so I'm doing something. No, you're not doing anything. A lot of people need to actually realize and understand that just because you're working a job doesn't mean you're doing anything. Yeah, you're doing enough to survive, but why do you think working a job entitles you to own a property? You know? Like those idiots like Gary Stevenson say, oh, in the 50s, my, you know, what do you say? I don't even know the year, but he's like, my dad worked in the post office or something like that, and he owned his own home. Well, that's back in the boomer days, man. You know, that's back in the boomer days. This ain't the boomer days no more. So don't tell me about back in the boomer days. And there's always other ways to make things work. We're going to talk about Gary Stevenson as well in this video, because I've had enough of that guy. I've really had enough of him. Okay, but that's the thing. I mean, back to the point, these jobs that people work, they're not getting progressively more pay over time. You know, actually they're making less, and they keep working these jobs, and then they complain. Why do you keep working these jobs? Right? Why do you keep working these jobs when you're getting poorer with it? I would not keep doing the business that I'm doing if I wasn't getting progressively richer over time. Now, you know, there were issues that I had where I was stagnating, right? But now I figured it out, right? Give yourself a few years. But if you know, you got guys that work the same job for 10 years and they've gotten nowhere with it, and they still keep doing it. And these are the guys crying about the cost of living crisis, and it's like, you're not doing anything to fix the situation though. You're just crying on the internet. You got that loser mentality, you got that victim mentality, right? And that's your problem, man. That's your problem when you really think about it, and when you really break it down. That is your problem. You're not doing anything to fix your situation. Working class people, oh, just working a job, man. And yeah, you're working a job, but so what? You're not, it doesn't mean you're doing anything. Oh, I'm just working a job, man, a good day's work. You know, these working class people, like a lot of them, you know, the working class mentality is not a good mentality to have at all. Just because you're doing a job doesn't mean that you're improving. That's not self-improvement, right? Working a job, you're just surviving, but you're not thriving. You're not improving. You're not doing anything. Like, there's like this page on Reddit called, I think it's called High Earners Not Rich Yet. Henry, something like that, right? Henry UK. There's one for the UK. Henry UK on. I don't really go on Reddit, but you know, with Reddit and stuff like that, you know, you just end up on it, right? You just end up on Reddit. It's one of those things that you just end up on it through like Google and stuff, but you're not actually reading it. You're not actually going out your way to find it, right? So you look at these stuff like Henry, right, and you look at how their wages progress, right? How their wages progress over time. Okay, how their wages progress over time. Now, am I correct about this, Henry? I don't know. I could be wrong about it. You know, I could be wrong. That might not be the Reddit. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But there is a Reddit that, you know, it might be, but there is a Reddit where they talk about, I'm reading it right now. I think it is the right one, because they're talking about making 300k a year, but I'm not seeing any posts right now that show. But it's like they break it down and they talk about, in 2019 I was making this, in 2020 I was making this, I invested my money in this, etc, etc, right? A lot of you guys, you ain't doing nothing. Your money is just staying stagnant, and you're getting poorer year after year, right? It's time to make changes, man. It's time to make changes. You gotta make changes. I made changes. I didn't have a good few years, man. You know, 2022, 3, they were bad. You know, 2022, 3 were bad, but you know, I kept myself above water, and we've had to deal with a lot of things. You know, we've had to deal with a lot of things: cost of living, war in Ukraine, Brexit. A lot of these stuff affect people differently. Now you've got the Trump tariffs. You know, things may affect you differently depending upon, you know, how you basically run your business, right? But my thing is this. I'm just reading the Reddit right now. But that's the thing. When it comes to jobs, I think jobs are difficult. I think careers are difficult, man. I think it's difficult. I mean, I could go out there and get a job for like some tech company somewhere, you know, because I got experience in. But yeah, I think jobs are difficult, man. I think jobs are really, really difficult. It's difficult to get like make a few $100,000 a year in a career, bro. It takes a lot of time. I think it's difficult. I don't recommend that. Because if you could do that, why aren't you doing that already? The thing about jobs is that typically, if you don't come out of university with a good job, you know, or within a few years out of university, it's very, very difficult to buck that trend and go in your late 20s, your early 30s, your mid 30s, whatever, into those jobs and try to get a high earning career, man. You know, that's why I say to guys, like, you know, don't make things unnecessarily hard for yourself, man. I think it's a lot easier to start an online business, and don't believe these people who tell you entrepreneurship is hard. It's hard because they make it hard for themselves. It's easy actually, but I mean, you know, nothing is really easy because you have to compete. That's the thing with entrepreneurship. Even though there are some like businesses that are very easy to do, you know, it's like the competition is what makes it hard. Every business is somewhat hard because of the competition. I guess the only thing that might be easy is that the only thing that might be easy, I'm just reading the Reddit right now, but let me stop reading this Reddit anyway. The only thing that might be easy is if you have no competition, right? If there's no competition, then it could be easy, but then you know, how long is that gonna last really? I've been watching like I watched one video. The guy was talking about the Trump tariffs destroyed his business overnight. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It's kind of somewhat viral. I mean, you may be seeing it. Some French guy, right? Do I feel sorry for this guy? No, I don't, you know, because the writing was on the wall. This Chinese business model. Remember years back when I told you guys about the Chinese business model? Don't do that. This must have been in 2020 or 2021. Must have been around now. I told you guys, don't do that Chinese business model. I said China's a volatile country. Things can change up on you, right, at any time. Look what happened in 2020 with what happened in China, what started in China. Don't do that Chinese business model. And people were warned about these tariffs. I mean, Trump did something in his first term. I don't actually know what he did, but he did impose some kind of tariff, right? Some kind of tariff. I don't exactly know what he did with China, but people were warned, man. And people go out there and invest big money in China to import, and now they're slapping tariffs on them. You know, this is why people make things hard for themselves, because they don't do their research. This is when people say, oh, business is hard. Yeah, it's hard because you don't do your research. Why are you doing the Chinese business model when Trump got re-elected? I would have sympathy if it was Biden that got re-elected, but if it was Trump and you go out there and do the Chinese business model, you're not very intelligent, are you? You know, especially if you're gonna slap a lot of money down, you're not that very intelligent. But this is the thing, people make things hard for themselves because they get involved in high risk. I could be a millionaire right now if I wanted to, but it's high risk, you know. This is the thing. It's like, yeah, you can become a millionaire. I mean, there was a guy on YouTube who he was never really a millionaire, but he made 2 million in sales, which, you know, is far from being a millionaire. I mean, but he said he made 2 million in sales, and now he's working minimum wage, right? He made 2 million in sales online. Yeah, because, you know, he tried to get rich quick and flopped. You know, he ran out of money essentially, because people, they get involved in entrepreneurship and they just think that they can take so much risk. But the thing is that it's the risk that is making it hard. That's why you fail. If you don't take too much, now I'm not saying don't take risk, but you have to manage it though. These guys don't know how to manage their risk. They don't understand risk versus reward, you know, which is something I've spoken about on this channel for many years. Risk versus reward, man. A lot of guys don't understand it. That's why they fail. That's why they fail, man. And they fail, and then they go and support Gary Stevenson, you know, a guy who's never been an entrepreneur. In fact, let's play this Gary Stevenson. Let's play this guy, because I want to talk about this guy, right? So right now we're going to play Gary Stevenson and him telling people entrepreneurial is sick if people are in poverty. So listen to this. Some of you guys must have heard this clip, and I think it's got 10 million views. This guy Gary Stevenson is a sensation. 10 million views, almost 10,000 comments, almost 300,000 likes. Listen to this, guys.
I come from East London, okay? My friends can't feed their kids, okay? And if it was as simple as going out and being an entrepreneur, I can bet you they would do it. I can bet you they would do it. I'm sick of multimillionaires telling kids who can't afford to turn the heating on, you just need to be more entrepreneurial. It's sick, Dan. It's sick. But this gives people mental illness. It gives people mental illness. Tell them the truth, okay? Your older generation, we took the opportunities, and now it is almost impossible to get out of poverty. And don't just stand up there and wave, you know, your millions of pounds in front of them and say, if you were entrepreneurial like me, you could do it. You could have it. Because it's sick, because they can't. They can't feed their kids, Dan. They can't turn the heating on. Don't tell them to be more entrepreneurial. Fix the system that drives more and more and more of them into poverty every generation.
Okay, so I just wanted to play that one time. Okay, so you guys heard what he said. Now I'm going to play it one more time, but I'm going to insert my opinion. So listen to this one more time.
From East London, okay?
Okay, so he come from East London. So this is his fake guruism about him, right? He is somewhat of a fake guru because he says that he was poor, right? He says he grew up poor, but really, you know, he may have grew up poor in East London, right? But the thing is that, okay, you grew up poor in East London, that's fine. But you really didn't suffer being poor throughout your 20s. You got that trading job when you were, what, 22 years old? Within a year or two, you were making a few $100,000 a year, you know, and then you made $1 million, I think, by 25 or 26. So you never really went through real struggle. You know, being poor when you're a kid doesn't really count, in my opinion. That doesn't count, man. It's a different ball game, being poor when you're a kid to being poor when you're in your 20s and 30s, because when you're poor when you're a kid, right, there's nothing you can actually do about it. Whereas when you're an adult, it hits different to you, because you can do something, but it's hard to do something, but you can do something to fix your situation. So it's a different ball game.
My friends can't feed their kids, okay? And if it was a...
Okay, they can't feed their kids, yeah, because first of all, a lot of people are working in jobs, okay, that weren't designed for you to have a family on. I've said this before, minimum wage. You know, minimum wage was never designed for you to have a family off of minimum wage. It was never designed like that. Okay? It was never designed like that. Minimum, the key's in the name. Minimum wage. Okay? Minimum wage. That means you're living on a minimum. You're living on the bread line. Okay? You're renting a room. You're eating, you know, ramen noodles and tin tuna, right? Because you're living on minimum wage. Why should minimum wage be so high, right? Why should it be so high? The whole point of having a minimum wage is giving people a start in life. You're not supposed to remain on minimum wage, right, and then try to raise a family off of that. These people aren't earning enough money to be doing what they want to do. Whose fault is that? That's the system that make them? No, it's not. Feeding your kids is not impossible under the system. It's not even hard under the system. Go outside, restaurants are packed. Airports, you know, in the summer, even, you know, they're packed. You know, concerts are packed. You know, these expensive concerts, you got tens of thousands of people in them. Football arenas, stadiums, Wembley Stadium, you know, 80, 90, 100,000 people. Expensive tickets is packed to the brim. You know, let's not kid ourselves. Let's not believe that, you know, people are just so poor. Everyone's so poor, which is what socialists always like to tell you, that everyone's so poor. Yeah, the bottom 5 to 10%. Does the bottom 5 to 10% need to have kids? You know, do they need to have kids? They don't really need to have kids. They choose to have kids because they want to fit into society's standards. But the thing is like, well, I mean, you're paying the price, and it's unfortunate because those kids have to pay the price of their parents' mistakes.
Simple as going out and being an entrepreneur, I can bet you they would do it. I can bet you they would do it.
Okay, so he say if it was as simple as being an entrepreneur, I can bet you they could do it. Yeah, but there's negative propaganda against being an entrepreneur, and you're part of the guy who spews it. You know, that's the point. There's negative propaganda. Oh, they always tell you 95% of businesses fail. They tell you this and that. There's negative propaganda against being an entrepreneur, right? It's tough. It's tough if you got kids to feed. I'm not saying that, you know, it's easy, right? But it's gonna have to start as a side hustle at the end of the day. You're gonna have to find a way to make it work. I don't have kids. I'm not the most qualified to speak about what it's like to even have a child. But like I said, why have a child if you're struggling? You're making things harder. It's just like the topic of this video. People make things unnecessarily hard for themselves, and then they complain about the system, but they don't take accountability for what they've done in their own life. That's the problem I have with people, especially in the UK. This is a culture in the UK. This Gary Stevenson is the most popular man in the UK right now. I really believe that. And not only is he the most popular man in the UK, I'm not saying he's the most popular man in the UK totally, because a lot of people don't know him, but amongst Gen Zers and millennials who, you know, watch YouTube and social media, I think he's the most popular man in the UK. I can't see anyone else.
I'm sick of multimillionaires telling kids who can't afford to turn the heating on, you just need to be more entrepreneurial. It's sick, Dan. It's sick. But I speak this.
Okay, so this is a debate when he's debating against, I think the guy's called David or Daniel Priestley, some Aussie guy, right? This is not a good argument to say it's sick, Dan, it's sick. This is where you lose a debate, because you're using an emotional argument, but anybody could use that same argument. I could say you're sick, Gary, because you're telling guys that they can't get rich through entrepreneurship, but you've never been an entrepreneur. This guy's never been an entrepreneur, right? He's never been an entrepreneur in his life. He was a trader. He got where he is, you know, through his career, through academia. He said he was good at mathematics in school, and he went to London School of Economics, won a trading game, and that's how he got his trading career. So he's never been an entrepreneur. So why are you telling people it's sick, Dan, it's sick, when you've never been an entrepreneur yourself? How do you know that they can't become rich being an entrepreneur when you've never been one? I can say you're sick for telling people to stay in poverty and not be entrepreneurs. That's not a good argument. I'm not saying I'm going to say that, because that's not a good argument, but that's basically the flip side of the argument that he's given. It's a weak argument, Gary. That's a very weak argument.
It gives people mental illness. It gives people mental illness. Tell them the truth, okay? Your older generation.
People can get mental illness for a myriad of reasons. I think the UK personally does give people mental illness. I think living in the UK does give people mental illness. That's why I told people to leave the UK, and that's why I'm leaving the UK myself. I'm surprised I haven't, but I have gone close to losing it, but I've never lost it. But yeah, I think the UK is a toxic environment, very toxic.
We took the opportunities, and now it's almost impossible to get out of poverty. And don't just stand up there and wave, your millions of pounds in front of them and say, if you were entrepreneurial like me, you could do it, you could have it, because it's sick, because they can't.
But you're doing the same thing. You say that you're a millionaire, you're waving your trading success, saying I could make £2 million a year working for in any trading floor. He says that all the time. I could make £2 million a year in any trading floor, but I'm doing this. You do exactly the same thing that you're criticizing people are doing, though, because you've admitted that when people tell you how can I make money trading, you tell them you can't do it, right? So you're doing exactly the same thing, Gary. This guy's a hypocrite.
They can't feed their kids, Dan. They can't turn the heating on. Don't tell them to be more entrepreneurial. Fix the system that drives more and more and more of them into poverty.
How's he going to fix the system? First of all, the elites, okay, that control these world governments, they created the system to begin with. And they created it for a reason, okay? They created the system for a reason. So how are they going to fix the system, the very same system that they created? Why would they fix it? Why would they fix the same system that they created for a reason? That doesn't make sense either. They're not going to just fix the system because they created it so that it would be in the position that it's in. And I've said this already. I know what the deal is. And the deal is that he's right that inequality is getting, his whole thing, inequality is going to get worse. Yeah, I said that too. I said that too, that people are only going to get poorer. And then the governments are going to hoist upon us. What are they going to hoist upon us? Universal basic income. People will get poorer. AI will be introduced. There's a reason why Donald Trump and Elon Musk pledged, okay, 500 billion, okay, to AI. It is 500 billion, right? I'm pretty sure it's 500 billion. I think they call it Project Stargate, right? It was a 500 billion investment, okay, to AI. That's a hell of a lot of money, right? And there's a reason why he did that. And what did Elon Musk say about universal basic income? He said it's a certainty. Okay, that's what he said. So Elon Musk is a big supporter of UBI because he understands that they're going to take the jobs away. So people are going to need a source of income, and that's going to come via the government, UBI. Okay, so this is the future of the Western world. This taxing the rich, it's all nonsense. He's talking a bunch of nonsense. He's talking an absolute bunch of nonsense. Taxing the rich is not a reality. Okay, it's a fantasy. He's trying to sell you on a fantasy, and people are following this guy. You're following a guy who's giving you a fantasy solution when you could just start an online business, get out in the UK and live a nice life overseas. You could do that. Now he's gonna say, you're sick, Unreal, you're sick. That's his rubbish argument. Well, I never said it's easy, but you made it harder for yourself if you got kids. I'm sorry, but I don't have kids. That's why it's easier for me, you know. But it's still doable. People have done it. It may take you longer. It's how badly do you want it, man? Do you want to complain more, or do you want to have a good life more? See, that's the thing with me. I want to be a rich man, right? I want to be a rich man, and I want to be a rich man more than anything else. That's why I'm willing to sacrifice. I'm willing to make the sacrifice. It may take you 10, 15, 20 years to become rich, but so what? At the end of the day, better late than never. I'd rather reach my goal and retire in luxury than never reach my goal and retire in poverty and never get what I want in life. Some men will never get what they want in life. And let me be real, I gotta be real with you, because I've never been one of them type dudes that come on YouTube and say everybody can make it. You know, I've not been one of them type dudes who come on YouTube and say everybody can make it. I don't believe everybody can make it. In fact, the vast majority of people will fail in life. They will fail in their pursuits of wealth. You know, they will fail. I'm just telling the truth. I've never been somebody who's blow smoke up people behind and tell them that you can make it, you can do it. Of course, there's always a chance, but the chance of you making it is very, very low. Yeah, the chance of you making it is very low. But you know why most people don't make it? You know why most people don't make it? Most people don't make it because they give up, right? They give up too easily. That's the reason why most people don't make it. You have to keep going. You have to keep going. You have to keep fighting. It's tough to keep fighting. You have to have a strategy to keep fighting. You have to have some form of like affirmations or whatever works for you, right? Whatever works for you. But it's not easy to keep going because you're going to be making sacrifices and your life will get worse, by the way. Don't think this is an easy journey. When you begin this journey to wealth, your life will get worse because you're sacrificing your comforts, right? You're sacrificing whatever you like to do, video games, maybe you like drinking, maybe you like, smoking weed. You're going to have to sacrifice these things. Dating, a lot of guys like to date and have girlfriends. You have to sacrifice a lot of things. Most people ain't willing to sacrifice to become successful. I am, because I want it that bad, and that's why I'll become successful and you won't, right? But let me tell you something. There's nobody who would like go full in, all in, hardcore, right, on pursuing success. Okay, self-improvement, however you want to call it. Let's call it pursuing success. Self-improvement can be other things like going to the gym, and that's not going to get you rich unless you're in that field. But pursuing wealth, pursuing success, right? There's nobody that's going to do that for 10 years and get nothing out of it. I don't think that's possible. I don't think it's possible. And I wanted to do another response to Gary Stevenson where he's talking to this guy called Jimmy the Giant. I may still do that video, I may not, I don't know. But I've been watching a lot of Gary Stevenson and his responses to Gary Stevenson. And if you like the Gary Stevenson talk, just put it in the comment section, Don't just sit there and don't say anything. You want more content on the channel, you can say what you want on the channel and I might do it, So if you want more Gary Stevenson, put it in the comment section, right? But that's the thing. You commit yourself 10 years, okay? Even just 5 years, but 10 years will, and see if you don't see a massive improvement in your situation. You'll see a massive improvement. And people will make excuses. Oh, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to do that. It's easier to be poor. Well, yeah, if it's easier to be poor, then why complain about being poor? That's the thing. It's like people don't really want it that bad. They only want it if it's easy. It's just like, these guys on the internet who complain about not having a girlfriend, right? But they don't do anything to improve their SMV, right? There's one particular fat boy from Georgia. You guys know what I'm talking about. A fat boy from Atlanta, Georgia, former church boy, okay? And he does nothing to improve his situation. But he complains about not having options with the opposite gender. These guys are the same as like the socialists. They don't want it unless it's easy. They don't really want it, so that's why they don't get it. They don't want it because if it's not easy, so that's why they'll never get it. Is everybody going to have success in life? No. Will most people fail in life? Absolutely. Absolutely. The vast majority, overwhelming majority of people will fail. I think that's just nature. Because when you look at it, right, when a human being is created, okay, the sperm, okay, I don't know how many sperm there are, okay, but the sperm has to fertilize the egg, right? A sperm has to successfully fertilize that egg. But how many sperm gonna fail though? The vast majority are gonna fail. The vast majority will not win that race. And then, you know, that might just be a microcosm of life in itself. That, you know, most people are going to fail and only a few are going to succeed, right? That's just the reality. I think that's I don't think everybody's supposed to be successful. Socialists will say, you know, everybody's equal, which is, you know, we know that's absolute nonsense, but that's the reality. It's like we're competing. Have you got that fight in you? A lot of people have no fight in them. So having a bit of fight, a moderate amount of fight in you, you're already going to beat people. I've already beaten a lot of people off of the fight that I've got in these past 5 years, 6 years. Off of the fight that I've put forward in the past 5, 6 years, there's people who've gone out of business. I didn't go out of business, you know? So it's about defeating other people. I know a lot of people don't like to compete, but at the end of the day, you have to compete. You have to compete, man. There's no way out of it. You know, it exists in nature. It exists everywhere. There's no reason to believe that we shouldn't compete with one another. There's no reason to believe that. You know, these socialists want to believe in a Disneyland world, and that's why they're highly unsuccessful, because they want to believe in a Disneyland world that doesn't exist, and that's why they get chewed up and spat out. But for me, you know, I've been telling you for the past 5, 6 years pretty much everything you need to know, man. It's up for you guys to go out there and do it. And if you don't want to do it, if it's not worth it for you, you relinquish your right to complain. That's my thing. I hate when guys complain about stuff when they're not doing anything to fix their situation. Like that one imbecile that made that video response to me. The dude can't even get a job as a bartender. He's trying to become a bartender. I put over 30 years old. A job that's designed for high school dropouts and high school students and college students. You know, these guys are delusional, man. They ain't got no fight in them. They're not risk takers. They're not hungry. They're not competitive. They're not intelligent, that's for sure. And some people are just dumb, and I said that years ago on my live stream. Some people are just dumb, and if that's the case, blame your parents. You know, blame your parents. The system ain't the fault, because the system doesn't force anybody to reproduce. You know, the system don't force you to reproduce. Your parents choose to reproduce. Or, you know, if people really put the work in and they get nowhere, right? Genuinely, which I don't believe is the case, but if people genuinely put the work in and get nowhere, well, your parents, that's your parents' fault. You're just dumb. You know, you gotta be. You know, you gotta be just dumb. But I don't believe everybody should reproduce anyway. I never believed that. I never believed that, because ultimately, you know, you got a guy like David Martinson. I mean, you know, I'm not going to talk about that guy in this video, but, you know, but that's the thing. I mean, it's a competitive world. It's a cruel world out there. But I'm not going to like join like some socialist movement or play the victim just because I haven't had the life that I want yet. No, I'm going to keep fighting, because when I look at it, I've already, you know, achieved some things. I've already achieved location independence. I've already made enough money to go to another country and live a good lifestyle. Have I got the 2 to 3 million I want, you know, to be able to relinquish my citizenship and reasonably go overseas and buy a new citizenship? Well, you know, I'm gonna have to buy a new citizenship. I think that's about 200 grand. Have I got the money, the 2 or 3 million that I need to really do the things I really want to do? Even 1.5 million will probably, you know, low risk, because I don't take high risk like that. You know, you can probably do it in even less than 1.5, but 1.5 million, but I don't have that kind of money. So, but that's the thing. But just because I don't have that kind of money doesn't mean that I'm not gonna have that kind of money. It's about staying committed. If you've done certain things that you needed to do already, then you can do the other things. But it's about staying committed. It's about making progress. A lot of guys, they don't make any progress. They stay in the same position and they get left behind. And you cannot allow yourself. Yeah, you don't want to be in this race, you know. Because even if you're not in a rat race, I'm not in the rat race, you know. Technically, I'm not in a rat race, but I'm still in a race, you know. I'm in a race to generate the amount of money that I want to generate, so that I can do with it what I want to do with it. Things are getting more expensive. Yes, it's a tough time. Yes, it's a tough time, but these political movements and all this political claptrap, politics is a waste of time. I don't care what anyone says. How is politics gonna make you rich? How is it gonna fix your situation? It's not. What's gonna fix your situation is you. You know, that's what's gonna fix your situation. Yes, you can do it. But just don't make things unnecessarily too hard for yourself. It's not going to be easy, I'm not saying that. But do things that make sense. And most importantly, I say this time and time again, do what works. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. I'm not trying to reinvent no damn wheel. You don't need to reinvent a wheel to become a millionaire. Some people believe that. Some people believe that, you know, you need to be some Steve Jobs to become a millionaire. I don't know why they believe that, but people believe that you just can't become a millionaire by doing something basic. Yes, you can, especially over time. Especially over time. You can become a multimillionaire by just doing something that other people have already done, but doing it well. You know, you can, yeah, of course you can become a multimillionaire. I'm not saying you can become a billionaire, but, you know, who needs a billion, right? That's all I gotta say. It's the Unreal Man here, the Truth of Man. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you aren't already. Make sure that that notification bell so you're informed every time I load a new video.